Hello people. So I'm going to put forward a hypothesis here about the human design chart, and the hypothesis I'm going to put forward is that the thing that draws people off course, the not self as it's vaguely called, that it's not the mind doing these things. In the human design, they have a lot of ideas that the mind is creating its own stories and pulling people off course in a sense. My hypothesis is that it's not actually the mind itself that does this. My hypothesis is that throughout a person's life, they are experiencing a lot of not self emotions, and these not self emotions just kind of link together in order to create a whole set of ideas that draws the person off course. Now, that there is simply my hypothesis. That statement itself might be the whole of the video, but I am going to describe it in more ways than that. Bear in mind, these are all just vague general ideas of mine. I'm not trying to come across as an authority or anything like that. Firstly, let's define the not self. What is the not self? I think there is a lot of opportunity for this term to be very confused. Someone can just look at anything they don't particularly like and say that's not self. They could look at some political idea they don't like that might be completely correct and say that thing is not self. There are all sorts of words and language twisting that people use in the modern world to just kind of twist things into the way that they want. And it is a vague term, and it is something that we're not really going to know. We don't really know what is wrong and what is right. And it's not a particularly good term, but I will still use it, I will still define it. And this is my idea of the not self. This is how the not self themes of the different types form. Now, I ended up not using this key in this specific video, but I will still just show it at the beginning here. This is my diagram for the manifestor, the generator manifestor, the generator and the projector. These types each have different not self emotions. I could speak on each of them, and I will make little ideas on each of them, but I will focus mainly on the manifestor one. The manifestor will be the one that I use for this example. But just quickly, another thing I do want to say is where this idea kind of came from for me is that I have observed or just been acquainted with a lot of ideas that people use to improve themselves, and these are fairly mental things. Like, there are YouTube channels where people are talking about J.R.R. Tolkien's book, and they're saying, isn't this philosophy interesting? Isn't this mental trick useful in dealing with pain? And philosophy in general is something I think improves a lot of people's lives, completely changed people's lives in some instances. And philosophy is very much a mental discipline. It's very much a mind thought-based discipline. And even the human design itself, while the strategy itself, you could argue, is not mentally based, the whole aha, or listening to the splenic response or whatever it is, looking at the chart and just kind of diagnosing the person, which is something that you naturally do anyway. You don't notice you do it, but you do it, is a bit of a mental thing, I would argue. It seems to me that a lot of positive things from people, such as New Age spirituality or religion in some cases, is all very mental and very, very positive. So it's more like cleaning the mind or tuning the mind rather than throwing out the mind's wisdom altogether. Anyway, so we'll just go through a little bit of the not self, what it kind of is, how it forms, just my thoughts on it. This is just me logically working it through. So we'll start with an unknown type here. The example will mostly be manifestor, like I said, but I'll throw in some comments from the other types. You have a type. And then on the right here, we will put, this is a symbol for the good direction. And as children, as people, we automatically sense what is the right direction often, unless we have very strange ideas probably given to us from childhood. Most of the time we think, yes, this is the thing I want, this is the right direction, and we try and go towards it. But the world is a big, complicated place. And so one of the ways that the not self forms, in my view, is when we motivate towards something that we want, something that's good, and then it's pushed off from us. So with the manifester, they have some idea, something they want to initiate, some set of ideas they want to bring forward, say, and this is blocked, they're disrespected, whatever it happens to be. They don't have the resources, and this goes off to the side here and it shoots in the other direction. Now, of course, when we have more discipline, when we grow up, when we pray, meditate, whatever it is, we might not shoot all the way over to the negative side on the left here. But when we're young, when we have a lot of energy just throwing ourselves in, we will generally tend to get quite pissed at this. And I think this is how the not self forms, especially before we're really cognizant, so before 4 years old. For the manifester, say they want to do something, someone is in their way. Now, if someone is in your way, what is the emotion you feel? The emotion you feel is anger. And so this anger starts on this other side here. With the projector, say, they've put together, they've observed something, they try and bring up their insights and they're shot down. And they feel this is quite unfair. One of the ways that I wonder whether the projector not self is a little bit different from the other not selves is that the projector not self, I think, is fairly legitimate. They don't have the sacral power and they don't have an energy to the throat. And that is legitimately quite unfair. There are what I feel to be legitimate and not legitimate not selves. So I'll go into that in a sec. And say with the generator, I understand the generator least. From putting it together, I think the sacral runs off a kind of evolutionary psychology. Like everything that we're told about evolutionary psychology very much refers to the sacral's psychology. I don't understand how this becomes frustration. But I do think when generators don't respond to their sacral, their animalistic desire for experience gets kind of blocked because they're kind of going for the wrong things. And I think that desire and having it, I suppose that is it, isn't it? They have a desire, an animalistic desire for fun and pleasure, and it gets blocked, and that's very frustrating. It's not quite like anger because it's not like something's in your way. It's just kind of annoying. But I think there's more to the not self for each type than this. So I'm taking another arrow off here. The first bit is you try and motivate towards the positive and this is blocked and you're pushed down and the world tells you that's not good for you and it all becomes very unpleasant. But the other type is that the person has grown up and these are the emotions that they are kind of in the habit of. And also, if you're very angry, if there's an unpleasant emotion, you kind of look at what it is that you have in order to hurt the other people. That's what negativity kind of is. You form your intention for an unpleasant effect on another person. And so I think we unconsciously look at what we have and reflect that out to others. So with the manifester, they have an energy into the throat, and that can be very frightening. And if you are very angry at someone and you really push your energy into them through that throat, if you suddenly start expressing things very viciously, aggressively, then you will frighten them. And that is the thing. So something bad happened or you are mulling something bad over, you look at what your energy can do to harm the other person, and you form the anger. So this isn't actually in reference to a positive thing that's bounced off. That is just the not self habit that kind of forms. I have felt there is a kind of legitimate and illegitimate not self. And this is just a vague idea I have, and I don't know if it applies to all the types. But I felt an anger that's kind of motivating, an anger of, I wanted to go in this way, this thing stopped me, and it's not going to damn stop me. I'm going to find a way round it. I'm going to find another tool to use to help me in life to get back to that thing, even if it takes a long time. And even if that emotion might not be ideal, it might be suited to the world that we live in, which is obviously very grounded and confused. But there's another kind of anger that's not really logical like that. It doesn't seem to have a purpose, and it's very, very destructive. It's just an intense anger that it feels like it destroys a part of you. And I generally feel that meditation and prayer is something that will keep that emotion very far away from me. There is no good in it. The takeaway from this, what I'm trying to say, is that the not self emotions, and we're talking about emotions, sensations, the not self energy that comes out of these dynamics is not completely predictable. It's its own thing. It has a rhyme, it has a purpose, of reason, because it's bouncing off the positive here, and sometimes it's a positive strategy, but at other times it just isn't a positive strategy, and it's not something that I think can be summarized completely. Is one of those things that just is in the mystery of life. So to the next bit then, you have this person, whatever type they are, doesn't really matter, and they start forming negative beliefs and such. And let's say they're young. Let's say this is before they really get enlightened to whatever their thing is. So this person's solution in life might be to find some sort of Christian tract and become loving, might be to find the human design chart, it might be to start a business. Whatever this person is meant to do, whatever the positive strategy is for this person, hasn't been found. They're young, they have some bad environmental factors, so the not self is forming here. And every little problem that they've had has created a not self emotion. So let's say they were bullied, and one of the conclusions they come from that is, I have to scheme past people in X and X way to make sure I'm not bullied, or even to get revenge, to feel like I can harm the people that hurt me in the past. So let's say that's work, and let's say they got an illness for some part of their life and they couldn't really get over that, they couldn't really accept it, so they have a lot of emotions like, oh, life is unfair, God is out to get me, and then they have even more problems. And each of these not self incidents forms its own kind of thoughts, its own kinds of set of beliefs, and eventually you get a bunch of them strung together. And it's only when the not self emotions form together like this, the thing that the mind does is it links them together like a chain. It's like, this is the world as it is, I'm looking at it, trying to make sense of it. What do I have to make sense of it? What tools do I have to make sense of it? And so it takes one bit of the story from the illness, one bit of story from whatever childhood thing that happened, and it forms this story. Oh, I need to work really hard at this career so I can get loads of money and status and show those people in the past that they're wrong, say. Also, I can show off my super attractive partner that I'll have when I get there. And of course, it's so complicated. This whole thing is so complicated because for one type, that might be a completely legitimate thing. They might have a kind of positive not self. Say you've got a generator and they have some bad experiences, and then they work really, really hard and create a really good service for others, and they create this business, and life is kind of good. And then as they grow older, they are in a better place and they become their true self more. Whereas for another self, say a projector or a manifester, all this generator kind of stuff is not really them. So it's more not self. It has created a story that puts them in a job that's not suited for them, that is more suited for a generator type. And these are just examples. I'm not saying that generators should be working all the time. But it's a subtle difference because the mind is stringing everything together in most cases, and it's an easy shortcut to just say, well, it's the mind. But I wouldn't agree with that, because I would say that, like I said, with philosophy, with a lot of different tools, the mind is a very positive thing. So it's literally the not self stringing all these things together that is creating the negative experience, the negative story that, from the law of one quote, says prohibits the intended service that we were brought here for. So thank you for listening, and I hope that was interesting.